Hi, Deepali. It's a pleasure to interview you for this topic, breaking the glass ceiling, barriers that hinder women's career progression. So the first question that I have is, in your experience, what are the common stereotype or biases impeding women's workplace progression?
Sachin, thank you for asking this question because, sometimes we talk about bias, but we don't know what that bias is. And the bias can be silent. Uh, because I'm now senior enough where I have been through, appraisal cycles, looking at people's careers across my last 10 years in 4 or 5 different organizations. My experience is that a silent bias exists. And it's
Mhm.
not like this bias is conscious, it's subconscious. The silent bias is that nobody will come and say, I think you're a woman and therefore you're not good at maths. The second bias is that I think you're a woman and therefore I don't think you'll want to travel as much. The third bias that is there is that women may not be that good at technology unless they have some solid background, of studying engineering and managing those kind of jobs. So technology is considered, to be a bias against them. And fourth is that they may not be ambitious and they have to manage, home and work. And therefore, work doesn't come first with them.
Mhm. Great point, Deepali. Great point. Now, so how do you assess the success or the impact of diversity and inclusion programs, specifically which are aimed towards women for breaking these barriers or breaking the glass ceiling?
It's a very good question, Sachin. And I always say this to people that any program that you run, whether it is in the DNI space, whether it is employee engagement, we must have measures that we look at or set as objectives. Just like we measure employee engagement in a score and we do a review, similarly, I think there are percentages and numbers that DNI initiatives should also track over a period of time. Now, if it is within an organization, then I think to start with, just the gender ratio,
Hmm.
then the gender based pay gap should not be there. They must assess it and check if it's there, and then try and attempt that it isn't. Third is that they should look at the gender ratio across segments, which means junior segment, middle segment, and leadership segment. It should not be, the overall number. They should look at the employee engagement scores also from a gender perspective to say whether men and women are, at similar numbers or not. And then you could include specific questions which are pertaining to, whether I face bias or not, and then assess the answer to those questions depending on whether the respondent is a male or a female. I think so. A direct survey based impact measure the gender ratio across the junior, middle, and senior levels in the company, and looking at the gender based pay gap are, I think, some of the measures. There may be many more, Sachin, but these are the ones that come to my mind just now. The point that I'm making is that it needs to be measured. It cannot
Hmm.
only be anecdotal. If we don't decide to move the needle in a certain manner, if we don't decide to measure it, if we don't quantify the impact, it may not happen.
Right, totally agree, Dipali. Until unless you measure, how would you improve on yourself, right? Totally agree to that. Now, I know the next question that I have, you're a strong advocate of this, the mentorship and the sponsorship program. So, how does mentorship or sponsorship programs contribute in achieving or promoting women to push forward and break the glass ceiling?
I think I'm a very, very big believer of that because I have seen the advantage of that. Um, I think a sponsorship, mentorship, coaching culture needs to exist in every organization and for every individual. But I think the difference when we're talking in the gender context is that a lot of the times it's a misconception that women only require women sponsors or that only women sponsors can help. I think what matters most is that there are male sponsors for female candidates. And when you bring your organization culture or when you bring the DNI initiatives to a level where there is male sponsorship for female candidates, that's when you start moving the needle. One, obviously, because there are far more sponsors than available to you. And second, because that ensures that in a culture you get rid of the biases, that may exist from a gender perspective. Then it's not just sponsorship, it's mentorship and coaching. There again, I feel it's extremely important for a woman to get a male perspective from a mentor. Coaching is irrespective of gender and it doesn't matter. But from a mentorship perspective, because a woman is likely to then get a completely different take, a different perspective on the issues, on success, on opportunities that she's looking at. So therefore, male mentorship and male sponsorship is really, what is relevant. And I must give you an example of what I mean. When I was at L&T Insurance, I used to look after e-commerce. I was managing the P&L, and I used to look after marketing. And my boss then, Mr. Joydeep Roy, who I now consider to be a mentor and a sponsor for me, called me in one day and said that, look, we are doing a org restructuring and I'd like you to look after customer service too. Now, this is what a sponsor does. He thinks of you first and gives you an opportunity. And the funny thing that happens is that women actually do not think of themselves as, as capable sometimes. And I made the classic mistake at that moment when he surprised me, with this opportunity. And I said, why me? And that one should not do. I did make that mistake. He, of course, convinced. He did not have to do too much convincing, but he said, why not? And then I thought about it and I took on that responsibility and I was successful at it. And in the process, I learned a lot of new things and my portfolio increased. But this both is an example of why you require male sponsors, because there are just many more of them than inside an organization to get new opportunities to you. But I think this is also an example I wanted to share, that a lot of the times, and Sheryl Sandberg has actually documented this in her book, that women tend to sometimes not think themselves as entitled for the new roles, new opportunities that come their way.
Super, Deepali. I think this is a perfect segue to my next question, which is what role do men play in supporting advancements of women, be it in an organization or personal life? What do you think?
I think, thank you for asking that. Both are very important. I think a nation, a society, a city, a country can change culture only when both men and women participate in taking on an initiative. And I think men have a great role to play at home, as sons, as brothers, as husbands, as fathers, father-in-law. And I think their support matters a whole lot. I think the silent bias that I spoke about earlier, starts from even small things like women don't drive well. Women aren't good at maths, like I said. They start when you are very little and very young. So it's my appeal, therefore, always to all the men, that we need to be very conscious of, how we approach these topics, conversations, remarks around us, at home, in informal conversations, during tea breaks, during coffee breaks. And I think that's where I would encourage the men of today to support their daughters, into careers that may be different from, what they think traditionally have been, careers for women. So that's my take on what is happening in the informal domain at homes, or at colleges, or at play. But what is very important, I think, is what is happening inside an organization. I do not think as yet we've seen an example where a concerted role has been played by men inside an organization to sponsor and ensure that women do not face bias and that women break the glass ceiling. Where men have been extremely participative and encouraging is when it comes to creating policy frameworks, in enforcing policy, in creating benevolent work culture. I think they've been very men have been very participative and supportive when it comes to a junior segment of women and middle segment of women. But when it comes to women becoming CEOs, when it comes to women becoming board members, we all know, it's well documented, that I think there is a huge glass ceiling. Women have still not reached the numbers that they ought to, and I think that's where my appeal to all the men who are at work, and definitely men in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I think they are the ones who need to look at ensuring that the gender gap at workplace is smaller and smaller, and I hope it is equal at some point of time in future.
Thank you, Deepali. I think it's a learning for me as well going forward. Now, some great insights from you, Deepali, but now I want to get into your personal side, right? What are the barriers that you have seen personally? How have you overcome that? And some more anecdotes from your personal life that will help.
Sachin, it's very interesting that you asked me this question, because I started my life in a small town in Rajasthan, my adult life, that is. Okay, I went to college in a government girls' college in Rajasthan, in a very small town called Sri Ganganagar. And if 100 women joined the college in first year to finish their graduation, only 50 graduated out because they got married on the way. Government of Rajasthan was so encouraging that there was no fee, that you had to pay to actually get your girl, educated. So my parents paid no fee for my college, education. From then to now, a lot has changed. Where I started out, I think my father was told, by the way, by my grandfather, that if you educate your daughter so much, do you realize that you may not be able to find an equally educated boy in the community? That was the comment he made to my father when I got selected to do my MBA and I was going to go ahead and do my master's. So it all starts at home, by the way, a lot of the times. But I think at workplace, while I may have faced biases and a lot of them were silent, I don't think I encountered them and realized them as they were happening. I think it's only in hindsight that you realize that, why didn't I get offered that opportunity, or why didn't I get that role, or why wasn't I asked to perform that role, or why was I given a softer treatment, why was I given a softer and a cushier role, both ways. And I think my realization and personal experience has been that women were getting treated differently. And I said to myself that I need to turn this difference into an advantage rather than a disadvantage. So it's a reality that I'm not going to network the same way men do, perhaps. I'm not going to do as many smoking sessions, and I may not do as many drinking sessions, for example. And therefore, I've been very active in industry associations and doing, let's say, community work, where I get the opportunity to interact and, network with people. This is just an example to say that I think as a woman, one realized that you will be treated differently. So hence your approach needs to be different. But I must also say this with a sense of humor, that I did encounter, and not too many years ago, a corporate office where there was a washroom for men, washroom for women, and then there was a washroom for officers. And then the officers' washroom was not a unisex washroom, it was only for men. So I was senior enough by that time to be considered an officer, I can tell you that. But I think there are many such examples that women will give you. And I thought that I perhaps would never face this in my lifetime. But I have seen this myself.
Thank you so much, Deepali. I think there were some super insights and super anecdotes from you. Thank you so much for the session.
Thank you, Sachin. But Sachin, I do want to add, one thing over here. I think both adversities and opportunities come your way. I think what determines whether you succeed through it is your attitude, and that attitude is very individual. And that may not always be determined by whether you are a male or a female. But I just want, to say this today, that I think women are perhaps more resilient. I think they just need to inculcate more ambition. So, have a greater and a grander vision for yourself and your career. And I think that will just take you through.
Thank you, Deepali. I think after the session, there will be a lot of people trying to reach out to you. So, folks, you can reach out to Deepali through her Twitter, that it's at Deepali Nair, and also reach out to her on her LinkedIn.
And it's very easy to find me because I spell my surname with a double A. So it is Deepali and Nair. And I would love to hear from many of you on Twitter and on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Deepali.